Hey guys, welcome to Punky's World, and welcome to my world, the Blackstone Valley. This is a very historic area. I did this video once already, and it didn't come out at all. So, I'm a little frustrated, but let's do this again, okay? I live here. My father worked right here. Let me come in on that a little bit. Right there. I don't want to go nuts on that. Oops. Okay. Now, this little tributary here is called the Mumford River. The mills down here are on the Mumford. The mills further up are on the actual Blackstone River, for which this area is named. We are a Native American area, as well as being a center of the Industrial Revolution. We are the center of the Nipmuc tribe. Up here, Upton, Nipmuc territory. Like I said, we're also the center of the American Revolution in this area. We have, as mentioned, the Hayward Schuster, or Schusters to start with, and the Hayward Mill was a separate mill. And the two men eventually joined forces. They also had another mill connected to them in Uxbridge. And you'll notice that all of these places don't have dates. That's because some of them are villages in the towns. And you can see right up here, right here is actually a map of the towns with the river cutting through. The Blackstone Valley Heritage Homecoming was established in 1986. That's when the whole corridor was named historical in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Because we don't live in a state, we live in a Commonwealth. There are 4 in this country. There are Massachusetts, Virginia, Kentucky, and Pennsylvania. Now, there is part of the Blackstone Valley that is not represented in this map. You will see, I'm from here. This is the main part of my town, but I'm from this part of it. Down right below here is Rhode Island. And there is part of the Blackstone Valley in Rhode Island, but it's not represented on this particular drawing from the 18th and 19th centuries. Up here is Millbury, 1813. Brahmanville's part of Millbury. Marbleville might be too. Wilkinsonville's part of Sutton. Saundersville, I'm not sure which one that's from. And then there's Grafton. This is Northbridge, what they call Northbridge Center. Whitensville, that's all part of Northbridge. One of the interesting things is, where did I find it? In Whitensville, right here, Plumber's Basin. That's Plumber's Corner. That's a well-known corner in the town of Whitensville. And you come down this road between the factories and the mills. Most of the mills, and this is Hayward Landing over here. Most of these mills, first of all, don't exist anymore. Second, over here. Second, the ones that, oops, that's funny. I need to tighten that. There we go. The ones that do, for the most part, are not working mills anymore. Down here, where my father worked, there is an envelope company in there. There's an automotive shop at one end, the end where my father worked. There is also a pot growing operation on the second floor. I'm laughing. It's perfectly legal where I am. So, but who would have thought that? This is probably a good place for that operation because this was a government contractor, military contractor. So it has the security, it has the fencing, it has the guard shack. You're not easily going to get in there. And it was made that way on purpose because they were a government contractor. I think it's funny because what are you going to steal? A blanket? That they're probably going to give you anyway, if you work there. So believe me, we had lots of them. In fact, if you go online, I'll try to find the link. There's actually one for sale with the Haywood Schuster tag on it, which is really neat. This came from the Blackstone Valley Heritage Corridor in 1988, I believe. Yep. And but it's actually representative of the 18th and 19th century. That's why it appears that these two mills are next to each other. They're not. They're not even on the same street. But given the time frame, things looked a lot different. Again, you can see the river. This is Manchog over here. Again, another Indian territory, which is where I'm from originally, over here. A little north of where I am now. Actually, a little northwest of where I am now. Let's see. It was funny. Brahmanville. I saw the sign for that when I was with my dad in the car up here, Sparta Millbury. And I said to him, "It's Brahmanville. What the heck is that?" He said, "It's a village in Millbury, just like Manchog is in Sutton." So, and in the other video, we looked up the Felter Mill. Felter's Mills is another closed mill. It's like a strip mall in there now. Both of my uncles worked there. My Uncle Richard was a shop steward, which if you know anything about unions, you know that a shop steward is someone who is a leader amongst his peers for the union, speaks for them with the union, that sort of thing. That sort of thing. What the heck? Move. There we go. That sort of thing, and that's what he did for a long time. My Uncle David worked there for a long time as well. They both ruined their knees there. Because one of the jobs, and when I was telling you this the last time, I looked up and I noticed something up on top of the door trim. Well, it turns out it was a little thing to unlock the door in case you locked yourself out of the bedroom by accident. I'll show it to you when we go over there. I threw it in the drawer because it actually does work. We tried it on the video that didn't come out. At any rate. So, and I guess it would work for the bathroom too, because the bathroom has the same kind of lock. Part of the job there was scooting underneath the machines and picking up the little pieces of felt, or the little material that they use to make the felt, just little pieces of it, cleaning, basically. And the floors were very, very hard, and it destroyed their knees. My Uncle David had to have a knee replacement, but they couldn't even do a knee replacement when he needed it, at least not in the United States. So he had to wait a while with nothing inside of his knee. There were no guts in his knee, so he couldn't bend his knee or anything. And finally, the company's, what do you call it? The workers' compensation sent him to Canada to get his knee replacement because they were doing it in Canada before they were doing it here. So they sent him to Canada. So my uncle went to Canada, got a knee replacement. Probably one of the first people in the United States to have one. He can now walk. He can bend his knee. I mean, I almost cried the first time I saw him walking after the knee replacement. And his leg was bending like a normal leg. I almost cried. Because it had been since I was a little kid since I'd seen my uncle walk without pain and being able to bend his knee. So that was amazing to me. So, but they did take good care of him, I will say that. And I will say that Schuster's took good care of my dad. My dad never had any, well, he had a couple of injuries, but nothing serious. One time when I was little, came home and my dad was on crutches. What's going on? Well, it turns out one of the bales. See, my father worked in wool, and they had bales, and they would take the wool and they would dye the wool. He worked in the warehouse / dye house. In fact, he was the supervisor. And he had a foreman over him, and he was the supervisor. And eventually he had no one to supervise because they got rid of everybody, but he still had the title and the pay. So, which wasn't as important to him as it was to us, you know, because it was recognition for him. But this valley was the center, as I said in the previous video, of the Industrial Revolution here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And as I also mentioned, we have 4 Commonwealths: Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, and Virginia in the United States. And this was the center. And again, down here, Rhode Island also has a part in the Blackstone Valley. Most of the Blackstone Valley is in Massachusetts. But one of the historic towns is a town called Slatersville in Rhode Island. That Mr. Slater had the mills. He was a rich dude like Mr. Schuster or Mr. Hayward were. Anyway, and Mr. Whiten, or Whitten from Whitensville. These were all very rich people who built mills along the river or the rivers, because you have the Mumford and the Blackstone. The Mumford's a tributary of the Blackstone. And I live on the Mumford. I've shown you the Mumford. They both have a habit of spilling over their banks and doing some serious damage. But this area is historic. This area, most of these mill buildings have been turned into other things, you know, housing. A lot of them have been turned into housing, especially in this town. The Schuster Mill, the one that my father worked at, as mentioned, envelopes on the bottom. There's a car garage down at the end where he worked. And on the second floor, there is pot grow operation. I still think that's funny because, well, I mean, it's legal now, but it's still funny because it's the last place you would have expected. But as I mentioned, they were a government contractor. They have the security to have a safe grow. So why not? Felters has become a strip mall. Let's see. The big Hayward Mill is apartments. Another small mill that used to be part of the axe mill that Hayward and Schuster took over later is also an apartment complex. Oh gosh. A lot of the ones at Uxbridge, some of the ones in Millbury, all apartment complexes. Worcester, same thing, apartment complexes. It's kind of sad in a way, you know, because these are the places where the people, well, my generation was the last generation whose parents worked there, and who may have worked there for a short time before they were gone, my generation. So I'm the final generation of the mills, and it's sad to me to be, among the final generation of the mills in this historic mill valley. In Manchog, it was the BB&R Knight Company, and they created Fruit of the Loom. It literally meant the fruit or the results that came off the loom. And their logo began in the little village of Manchog. You can look it up. I'll actually put a link to that in the description of this video. It's quite interesting. Now, if you go, yeah, the mills are right here. This is the big mill. Let's see if I can. This is the big mill in Manchog where Fruit of the Loom was, right there. And that's the only mill still standing in Manchog. Manchog also had another mill, mill number 2, that was sorry, this is very crooked. Chicken farm became Buster's Chicken Farm, which burnt down, and it was a whole horrible thing that we've discussed on a previous video, which I will link in the card. Excuse me. So yeah, I'm the last mill generation in this town. Last generation whose parents worked there, last generation who could have worked there themselves. I know people in my generation that worked there. So, but we were the last of that generation. We were the last generation, I should say. And it's sad to me, as I mentioned. This was created, this map, in 1988, but it represents the 18th and 19th centuries of the area, and it has all the landmarks. And down here it has a legend so that you can find everything. So far, everything I have looked for, I have found without the legend. Like, this is Whitensville, so this is Whiten Machine. This is huge. Depending on where you're looking. These are all the mills in Manchog. That's actually the hotel. That's amazing. That has not changed one little bit. I mean, it's not a hotel anymore. It's a private residence, but it hasn't changed a bit there. And you can see the first and second congregational churches in Douglas. Okay, I'm not as familiar with some of these towns. I'm from this area. There's Plummer's Corner, they call it Plummer's Basin. There's Linwood. These are all parts of Whitensville. So I'm familiar with this area back and into Millbury. The Felter Mill actually had a couple of fires. The gentleman that owned Felter's when we were growing up used to do an amazing Christmas light display every year at his house. And we all know about it because my uncles worked there, and it was well known. When he died, his son didn't continue it. I guess he continued it for either 1 or 2 years after, but he didn't really continue it. It was just the first couple of years after the man passed. And so that was a tradition that we had as kids. Go to the Felter's house, and see the lights and get out of the car and you walk down paths that were lit up and listen to music. And I mean, it was amazing. Maybe I can find something about that. I don't know. But for us kids, it was amazing, Again, we were the last generation that got to do that, because he passed away when we were probably in our early teens, I would say, when he passed away. So yeah, Mr. Haywood and Mr. Schuster have been dead for a long time. But their businesses continued on in other names. The Haywood Schuster Woolen Mill, the main mill that my father worked at, when Schuster's went out of business, which was after old man Schuster died, went out of business in the early 80s. It was taken over within about a year by a company, another woolen mill called Guilford of Maine. And my father went to work there. And Guilford sold the business to an international company that made fabric wall coverings, still working with wool, called Interface Interior Fabrics. Interface had offices all over the world. One of their big main offices was actually in Japan. They still had the office in Maine because Guilford had sold, I guess, the whole business to them. And I'm very proud of my father. My father was a very trusted employee. He would pick up the what do you call it? The guy that ran the whole mill. The guy who operated the entire mill at the airport, coming back from Maine or wherever, or the big wigs coming in from Maine, he would be the one that would go, to the airport to pick them up. So he'd be home late from work that day because I gotta go to the airport and pick up the big wigs. Oh, I don't want the big wigs here, And OSHA was always a royal pain in his backside. Because when you run a department like he did, the warehouse die house, you have more paperwork and stuff that you have to do for OSHA and all of that than you would if you were just a peon, which he would tell you he was a peon, but my father was actually a supervisor. He had a foreman over him, but he was the supervisor for warehouse die house. And you could always tell what color they were working with on any given day because my father would come home with little pieces of wool fuzz on his shoulders, and I'd be like, "Oh, purple today, Dad. Blue today, Dad." So you just knew, And he would come home and immediately go to the sink, scrub his hands because, especially if he was working with the dyes, it would be nasty, and he wouldn't want to come near either one of us until he washed his hands because it was nasty. He never thought a lot about the accolades that he received, like the Gipper Award that I showed you, which is hanging in here, because he just didn't. It was part of his job. For him it was part of his job. Okay. To do the things he did, so he didn't think a lot of it. But we were very proud of it, and we made sure that it hung on the wall. It still hangs. Long after his death, it still hangs. And it always will. My lifetime, anyway. So yeah. That's why I'm a proud resident of the Blackstone Valley. It's where my heart lives. I have a scratch on my leg. Ouch. No, it's not as bad as I thought it was. I'm actually going to use an electric razor on my legs. I think that'll be better. Not that has anything to do with this, but I already took a picture of this as a thumbnail. Yeah. we found when we were doing this the last time was we found on top of the, what do you call it? Top of the door, we found this. Turns out this was up there because if you accidentally hit the button and locked yourself out of the bedroom or the bathroom, this acts as a key. It's definitely simple, but it does work. It took me a bit to get it to work, but it does work, so I will keep it. So hopefully this time this comes out. Like I said, my heart lives here. We thought about moving. We thought about moving to Maine. We thought about moving to North Carolina when the company went to North Carolina, but this is where we live. This is where our heart is. So we never did. And I've considered moving to Maine. I just can't do it. Everything I know and love is here. You know, my parents' graves are here. So anyway, I am going to end the vlog here. Thank you so much for joining me for this historical tour of the Blackstone Valley. I've been wanting to do this video for a while with that poster. And I'm glad I finally got to do it. Give me a big thumbs up for the Blackstone Valley. Please click subscribe and your bell for notifications. Thank you so much. God bless you. Bye-bye.